So, to our panel, and starting with Dr. Edwards, I'll pull one off the app here. And a question from the audience says this: in which areas can small nations contribute in leveraging NATO capabilities? What kind of benefits could small nation expect to gain from NATO common pool in strengthening cybersecurity?
I guess without being very specific, I would say from a small nation perspective, the industries that you have, take a look in those areas, but hopefully you would have programs that are looking into R&D that come from educational institutions that are studying in specific areas, and you have to find where your nation has interest and has made investments, and then bring that capability to bear. You know, there's not just one thing, it is across the board, the types of capabilities that could be used. It could be as small as an algorithm that enables someone's tool to perform better. And so don't restrict your thinking in that perhaps you're a small nation and you can or you cannot provide some contribution. But normally in my experience, and even in NATO, it's coming from the educational institutions, it's coming from the companies that invest in R&D, science and technology in those areas.
Maybe I can, please. Yeah, maybe I can add a little bit, if I may. Whether you're a small nation or a big nation doesn't mean to say that you own the big nation's own innovation. And quite often, a lot of the innovation comes from small companies in many nations. One thing I will encourage, in the cybersecurity facilities, we get something like 600 visitors to our facilities each year. And many of these visitors are actually from our allies who are either embarking on the journey. Of course, we have the Cyber Defense Pledge now. Allies are doing much more in the field of cybersecurity, cyber defense. I would encourage our allies to come and see us. Come and work with our people. You're paying for the capability that NATO has, and it'll be absolutely our privilege and our pleasure to welcome you to our facilities so that we can share with you our experiences.
Thank you, Ian. Another question from the floor, and I guess this one starts with you, Peter. And the question reads: what sort of policy changes do you think may be required to achieve real agile type approach that can be adopted in support of cyber acquisition?
That is a question. How much time do we have?
Not enough to answer that, I suspect.
Okay. No, but a lot of that hinges on the willingness of the parties involved to really make change. I'm not necessarily in favor of asking for changing the acquisition regulation per se, because this will require a lot of iterations, and in the end will need to have the approval of all 28 nations. And we work with nations on a daily basis, and it's difficult to get unanimity. So we are convinced that we have a lot of what we need in our toolbox already. We're just not using it enough, and we may need a nudge from the outside, from the parties involved. This is why I asked for this consultation. But also the general manager yesterday talked about the study on agile acquisition conducted by RAND. This is an ACT study, so I cannot talk about this too much here today, but I'm told it will be released soon, and from that study we expect also some input what we can do faster and quicker. So I wouldn't say we need huge policy changes. We just need to look at the daily work and the best practices to speed up acquisition there.
Thank you, Peter. Another question from the floor, and I guess, Ian, this one's headed your way, and it's a small one, but in your assessment, Ian, how do we fast-track research and development, or in other words, close the gap between what academia are doing and what we want to deliver into operations?
Yeah, that's a real challenge, and Fred Jourdain lived through this challenge about 2 years ago. when we actually went through a 6-month pilot phase of innovating with industry. We set challenges. We asked for industry to respond to those challenges. And we basically proved that innovation can work. The problem is then, within NATO, that we can innovate as much as we want, but then implementing those solutions kind of causes, that's where we start to slow down a little bit because of the procurement processes. NATO's a big, and it's not the acquisition process, I'm talking about the entire procurement process. NATO's a big organization. Clearly, the allies are suffering from in financial crises as well as everybody else. And it is difficult for us then to take what we've innovated in such a short time and then implement it, because we've got to then come into the normal NATO procurement process. But as Peter's already said, there are a number of initiatives underway to try and find a way, particularly in the cyber field, where it's such a dynamic pace of cyber threats and the changing in technology. We've got to find a way of bringing in this, exploiting and utilizing this innovation and getting these initiatives in and fielded.
Let me offer some support to Ian's point. Innovative solutions, let's link our laboratories together and let industry prove some of the capability that you have in R&D. We can do that on a bilateral basis, such that your secrets are not exposed to the world, but you can prove some true capability. And then we can talk with ACO and ACT about bringing that capability into our exercise modes. And that provides, validation of some true kernel capability that, could excite ACT about, making requirements, fulfilling operational needs.
Thank you very much. And I'll take one final question from the app before we move to our coffee break. And this is a general sort of a comment to the panel. If cybersecurity is becoming the fifth field for NATO, what are you expecting the NATO construction in terms of where this ends up? Are you expecting this element of cyber warfare to be moved under the ACO responsibility, for example? Do you expect to see fundamental changes in the NATO organizational structure to embrace the fifth field?
Fundamental changes, I don't expect to see. I tried to draw a red line, Greg Edwards' view, of NetOps and cyber defense remaining together as core and essential. Many who I speak to have heard me say that. I have some experience in that area. Many nations have tried and done this, and it must stay in that area. So, not my own view, I'm not seeing any great changes. I think what essentially is being discussed is how coordination happens as part of command and control. And coordination is part of command and control. And so how, as cyber events, as they happen, how is that senior commander receiving the coordination of what happens and then being able to give instructions? So organizational change to ensure coordination and information flow is happening. I think that's the genesis of the discussion.
Thank you.
Can you ask me as well?
If you want to, Peter, of course.
Sure. I mean, it's outside my area of responsibility, but of course, I'm a NATO, I'm an agency employee and a citizen of a NATO nation. So if the agency is the NATO IT agency, IT, C4I, ISR, and cyber, and is responsible, will continue to be responsible for the implementation of these capabilities, I think this kind of work needs to be located within the agency.
Thank you, Peter. And Ian, concluding comment?
Yeah, I think the organizational change issue is a bit of a red herring. It is absolutely clear that since Warsaw, NATO has to change if it's going to operate securely in cyberspace. Then cyber has to be incorporated into every aspect of the business, whether it's our political business or our military business, whether it's logistics and planning through to operations. And there are, in my view, there are three elements, if you like, to this. There's the political level where the consultation goes on. There's the operational level, which is certainly the military domain. And then there's the technical level, the level that we operate at. And it doesn't really matter who belongs to whom. What really matters is that everybody gets the support that they need to fully integrate, in a sensible way, fully integrate cyber into our everyday business in NATO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to let the panel off the hook now because I know we're going to move to a coffee break. But once again, gentlemen, thank you for your presentations. Thank you for the questions.